All right, Kevin. Hey, thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate you joining me for the podcast today. For those who may not know you, would you kind of give us a brief overview of who you are, what you do, and kind of, what you spend most of your time doing?
Yeah, hey, well, I appreciate you having me on. Excited to talk. Sure, happy to give you an overview of like what I do, things that I'm working on, and if you want, we talk backstory, like how these things came to be. But I'm a dentist, and I do pediatric dentistry once or twice a week. I spend a lot of the week, or I divvy up the week in various ways. One is I do kind of, I'll call it independent research writing type stuff, and I publish that stuff on social media and a newsletter and such. I also, what's been taking up a lot of time is I developed an intranasal device to treat sleep disordered breathing, basically snoring. So it's an anti-snore device. And we're working on getting that fully commercialized right now. So that's a big passion project that is taking up a lot of time, but excited that by the end of this year, that will be probably hopefully fingers crossed fully like commercialized and going. So I would say those are kind of the three big buckets. Like I love working out, so I work out every day. So talk about health, fitness, and and such. So yeah, I think that's a high level overview.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for that. I've been following you for quite a while, man. So I've been kind of lurking in the background of your social media for a while, and I'll be honest with you, you're in like a unique position because you are,
You can just say it. You could be
you're
like, you're a weird dude.
well, unique could be code for weird, right? But it's not. Okay, not in this case. You're in a unique position in that you are very much on like the dental health side of things. Like you're in there multiple times a week, but then you're also on the health, fitness, kind of food quality. You're on that side of things. That's a passion for you too. So, how did those two kind of come together, and what connections are you seeing from, your professional life into kind of your passion projects as well? What are those connections you're seeing?
Absolutely. So it's a lot of things I work on seem disconnected, but are they are indeed connected in various ways. And an example is like if your teeth are rotting, it's a good sign that your diet is off, right? So that is an important connection that a lot of people don't really make right away. But actually, like how this all came to be is I was first and foremost interested in fitness. I was a overweight kid. I almost said fat, but that's a triggering word for some people. No, but if I say it about myself, it's fine. I was a fat kid and I just was very insecure about it, didn't like it. By the time I was like in junior high, like 12, 13 years old, I'm starting doing weird diets. I get in the gym, I'm starting to work out every single day. And really, fitness was the first passion. Like, I went to college, I got a degree in chemistry and biology just so I could funnel the sciences through, like, how can I use this to lose fat and build muscle? And so that is my first part of the journey was very much fitness related, even doing like physique competitions when I was in dental school and such. The second phase of this journey was really, I'll say, health and fitness. Like I added the health in because I wasn't feeling good. I was working on a bunch of projects. I started a private practice treating sleep apnea. I started developing this medical device that was taking up a lot of time, and I didn't have the energy I used to. So that's what led me into, I'll say, the health part of health and fitness. Like, okay, I found this diet that was getting me like good physique results, but not good like mental energy, feeling good. And I solved that part of the equation with a lot of meat. And so that's how kind of health and fitness or like started. And how dentistry relates to this is well, in a number of ways. One is like, so I went in a unique dental career, like treating sleep apnea. It's called dental sleep medicine. And the reason we have basically epidemic levels of sleep disordered breathing, which is basically a continuum of snoring, upper airway resistance syndrome, through severe obstructive sleep apnea. I believe the reason we have this epidemic of sleep disordered breathing is because poor diet. And so diet affects everything from your body that you wanted, how you feel and perform, whether your teeth are rotting, whether you have malocclusion, whether you have sleep apnea and you're breathing properly. So this is all kind of rooted in diet. And a lot of the area I focused on recently is like your mouth, your teeth can tell you what to eat or what you should not be eating. And so by being a dentist, taking this kind of like, let me tell you like what your mouth is telling you. And if you wanted to say, hey, there's some people out there that think I've been getting beefs with some Peters lately, and like I like Ray Pete a lot. God bless his soul, he passed away a couple years ago. I think he's got a lot of great ideas, but one of the things is like he's a big advocate of sugar eating, and it's just totally incongruent with healthy teeth. And so I'm like the reason I'm asking him like, can you have a healthy diet that rots the hardest substance in your body? Like to me, it doesn't make sense from a common sense logical perspective. There's no way the body would have gone through millions of years of evolutionary pressures to develop these very hard teeth that withstand millions of years in the fossil record, but we can't keep them for one lifetime today. And sugar rots them. So how could that be like a ton of sugar? How can that be part of a healthy diet? Like that's incongruent. So, anyways, that was a long rambling of kind of like how these areas are interconnected.
So first of all, thank you for sharing that. And I've seen kind of your progression. You post your photos, when you were competing and all that. And many
Mhm.
people would be like, "Hey, that's the pinnacle, right?" Uh, but I tell people regularly, like, many times when you look your best, you feel your worst. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So you got to be careful. Like, just because you have abs doesn't mean you're necessarily feeling awesome.
it's
But
true.
so let's dive in. For those who might not know, you are a strong proponent of a carnivore diet, or we should say as like a zero carbohydrate kind of diet approach. Or
I would
would
say
you say, would you define that for me then?
no, I would say I'm a strong proponent of a meat-based diet. And so I
Okay.
started meat.health. And the reason I started meat.health was it became abundantly clear to me the number one problem in people's diet is they eat very little meat, and we should be eating predominantly. Like I believe we are designed, like as a species, designed to be predominant meat eaters, hyper carnivores, which basically means 70+% of our diet should be from animal-based foods, and maybe up to 30% from some plant-based foods, ones that are most biologically, I'd say, tolerated and congruent with our design. So not things like eating grass in your backyard like a cow, but underground storage organs, which there is an evolutionary history that we would dig up these roots and we can get energy from these roots, especially once the advent of fire took place. So I'm a proponent of a meat-based diet. I've personally done a carnivore diet for a long time, so I've been associated with carnivore, which is fine. I think it is a fantastic tool for many, many people, and maybe even something everyone should do for 90 days. Like like, hey, do it 90 days because then you can often back yourself into the right diet for you. You're like, all right, I got this solid baseline of like just meat. Let's try adding in if you want some tubers like a potato or some fruit, which I think are probably two of the most biologically consistent plant-based foods we could be eating: fruits and roots and some honey, like basically meat, and then a sampling of fruits and honey, whatever you feel best with, as well as match your lifestyle and goals. So sorry, that's how I would kind of classify my stance. But yeah, because a lot of my audience is like carnivore, hardcore carnivore, I think I'm thrown in there, which is totally fine. I'm an advocate of carnivore diet, and I've done it for a long time. And I think it can be a great tool and lifestyle for many people, but not for everyone, for sure.
Yeah. Sorry if I pigeonholed you
No,
there, but
all good.
I would say I fall into that camp as well, where it's like much more of a meat based, animal based eating because, like, for me, it's not sustainable for me personally to eat just meat. It just doesn't work for me. I tend to get super bored and a little bit too emotional about it. Like, it just, my
Yeah.
quality of life goes down in a sense, right? But easily 70% of my calories come
Yep.
from animal based products, right? And then when I have found that when I focused a lot more on these things, my digestion just got better, even when I ate things that may be a little more offensive.
Yep.
So it's like I feel like just by incorporating more animal products, I healed a little bit of something in there. Maybe my gut bugs got better or stronger or something. But even if I were to like go off the rails a little bit, and let's just say I just wanted to eat a pizza, and where before that might give me gas or kind of upset stomach, it doesn't even do that anymore. It's like
Yep.
I rarely do that kind of stuff, but it does seem like it has helped me quite a bit. So I would fall in that camp as well. What are you seeing though in your dental practice and your sleep, sleep apnea and sleep disordered uh practice
Yeah.
that you're dealing with, well, how are you seeing one, what are the things you're seeing that are really tied to diet? Like, because most people are not going to understand, like, most people here don't know any dentistry work, like, like lingo, right? So,
Right. Yep.
can you kind of break that down for us? Like, what is a poor diet doing to my teeth, to my mouth, to my facial structure? What is it doing to my sleep? What is actually happening here?
Sure. Maybe the best way to talk about this is I practice in these two areas of dentistry, pediatric dentistry and dental sleep medicine. And the pediatric dentistry I do, I work for this company called Smile America Partners. And so it's not my practice. They send me around rural Missouri, basically lower socioeconomic places where there's not good access to dentists and Medicaid patients. Uh, uh, so I go out to these areas of Missouri, usually just once or twice a week. And what I'm seeing is like just everyone has cavities, teeth are rotting out. You see almost everyone has malocclusion. So you got cavities, everyone's got malocclusion, everyone's mouth breathing. And when I say everyone, I'm just like, this is the normal. Like when you see someone that doesn't have cavities, they have straight teeth and they're like mouth shut, breathing through their nose, like that's an anomaly, but that should be what everyone is doing. Like that should be like the baseline health, but like the opposite is true. Like literally 90% of people are having cavities, malocclusion, mouth breathing.
And
So
what would
that's what
be
I'm
a
seeing.
malocclusion? Would you tell me what, like, define a malocclusion? What is that?
Yep, sorry. So
No.
malocclusion is crooked teeth, simply put, but also like impacted teeth. So wisdom teeth being impacted would be a malocclusion in a way because, and the root of these problems is that our jaws are too small, and so our teeth are just popping in wherever they can, or not at all in the case of wisdom teeth. And if that sounds unnatural, like all their teeth should be fitting into our mouth, yes, they should be. um, so that's kind of what I'm seeing, and I believe all this is actually rooted in diet, like fundamentally rooted in diet. So that's that on the pediatric side. What on the dental sleep medicine side, what I see in the pediatric dentistry with regards to like jaws that are too small, malocclusion, vaulted palates, mouth breathing, um, is manifested later in life as sleep disordered breathing, where their tongue is too big for their mouth, and there's only one place that tongue can go to escape. One is forward out the mouth, and the other one is back in the airway. So when you're sleeping, it tends to fall back in the airway, narrows the airway, blocks the airway, and causes sleep apnea. So sleep apnea is basically like it is. You have this airway you're supposed to be breathing through, and it gets clogged, it gets shut down, and the body will wake itself up, reestablish breathing, and then you go back into it again, and it happens all night long. So the things that I see in pediatric population are manifested later on in life, like as sleep disordered breathing, like sleep apnea, because the jaws are too small, the tongue is too fat, and yeah, and we as adults we never develop the proper oral posture, which would have the tongue against the palate, suction to the palate, the lip sealed, which will help keep that airway open. If I had some diagrams, it'd be easier to probably demonstrate that. But as adults, we lose this where our mouths are hanging open, the tongue's on the floor of the mouth, not at the top of the mouth, and all of that shrinks the airway down and causes you to have sleep apnea.
Okay. So, well, first of all, thank you for breaking that down a little bit. Um, where can you trace back when this kind of thing started happening? Because it seems like these are relatively new occurrences, it seems, or new normals
Yep.
in a sense. Not healthy normals, but new normals. Like most
Yep.
people go in and they need, you know, fillings and caps and everything else. So, can we trace back what was the change maybe that happened that you're seeing?
There's two distinct changes we see. One in the fossil record about 10,000 years ago at the turn of the Neolithic, the agricultural revolution, roughly 10, 12,000 years ago. Prior to that, Homo sapiens rarely had cavities, okay, or malocclusion. Teeth didn't have cavities. Teeth came in straight. All 32 of them came in. They weren't impacted. By all observation of these fossils, we didn't suffer back then from the oral health problems that we do today. But with the agricultural revolution, which is the cultivation of these crops like wheat and corn, eventually, especially in the Americas, we see a dramatic rise in cavities. So that phenomenon we see happen at the turn of the agricultural revolution. The next clear and lineage of which is really associated with the malocclusion, is the Industrial Revolution, roughly 300 years ago, when we started processing these grains and introduced sugar on more of a mass scale. And at this time is when we see the rise of malocclusion. So these teeth start not fitting in where they should, and teeth start getting impacted. And cavities also got way worse during this time as well. So like things got bad during the agricultural revolution, and then at the turn of the industrial revolution, things just got super bad, and they've continued to get worse and worse, to the point where today now, I would say the third kind of, which I would classify as maybe the technologic revolution, is this sleep apnea that is really a consequence of the malocclusion, the jaws being too small. But then you add on overweight and obesity, so you start depositing fat in your tongue as well as your neck, and basically all like the airway just starts getting crowded out. And so that's why we have sleep apnea. And people, we stop sleeping, we stop breathing in our sleep, which really should be a big, big red flag alarm going off if you're literally not breathing in your sleep. That is, you are suffocating, like basically on and off all night long.
Yeah, that to me that is a red flag. You're choking in your sleep and
But the prevalence is,
suffocating.
you wouldn't believe. You wouldn't believe the prevalence of like sleep apnea. There's certain estimates of like up to 25% of US adults have sleep disordered breathing, like from mild to severe forms. So it sounds wild, but like sleep apnea is becoming like, it's one of those things that is becoming normal. That's
It's
not normal,
it,
but it's common.
well, yeah, exactly. It's becoming normal, right? So,
Right.
what is it about these grains? What is it about sugar, grains, and this stuff that you see in the records that is causing one, our facial structure to get too small, which what
Yep.
causes that, and then two, um, if what's causing our facial structure to happen, like to
Yep.
bend in, basically, and why is that happening? Like, what is that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. So first, should probably clarify what's the cause of the cavities at the agricultural revolution. So the cause of cavities is fermentable carbohydrates. So you have bacteria in your mouth that will ferment carbohydrates and turn them into acids that eat holes in your teeth. And so to me, it's very clear, prior to the agricultural revolution, our carbohydrate load was much less. Like I was talking about earlier, it was probably 30% or less of the diet, which when you fill the 70+% up of with meat, nutrient dense foods, these anti-karyogenic foods, it means like non-karyogenic, like they don't cause cavities. It could balance out and offset any of the 30% of the more karyogenic, which would be like fruits and honey, which could cause cavities because they are fermentable carbohydrates. So that's kind of like in a nutshell, the cause of cavities. There's other things that exacerbate it, like mouth breathing, which we'll get to here in a second. But with regards to facial structure, why are our jaws too small? Why is the jaw hanging open and getting long instead of like broad, high cheekbones? Um, and to me, this is rooted again in nutrition, but in various ways. And we see this start at the Industrial Revolution. This is a time period where women went into the workforces. So we went from exclusive breastfeeding, often for years throughout human history, to bottle feeding for the first time, roughly starting 300 years ago. And bottle feeding, it uses different oral facial muscles. So the way that the infant is actually sucking on that bottle is different than it would suck on a breast. And then depending on what was put in that bottle, now commercial kind of like, you know, milk, fake milk, is nutritionally very different than breast milk, nutritionally very inferior to breast milk. So we have both like how the oral facial muscles are working as well as the nutrition in that is changing the facial structure. Secondarily would be what we wean babies onto. Now they're weaned onto basically mush out of a jar, which again does not require any chewing. It is more of a slurping mechanism. And we need to start chewing is one of the critical components of developing the jaws to stimulate proper jaw growth. But that is being totally neglected, as well as the nutrition in these weaning foods is less. Things like vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin K that play an important role in the development of the craniofacial structures. And so when we're not chewing, we're not getting the nutrition we need, and we're bottle fed, what happens is these muscles are not getting worked. So they kind of get elongated. We're not getting the nutrition we need, and certain like sutures are getting calcified, probably getting too technical here. But what will happen is like the palate will be vaulted. So the palate's supposed to be like a broad U, but what I see in most kids these days is a vaulted palate. And the reason that's an issue is because your tongue is supposed to rest on the palate. And if it's not, it's hanging low. And if it's hanging low, you're going to drop your jaw. And if you drop your jaw, your whole facial structure is going to elongate. And these tissues are going to push against your teeth, which are going to further cause malocclusion. So we got this like cascading effect of dominoes, which is really all rooted in like we're eating the wrong foods or we're eating them the wrong way. Like, so eating them the wrong way is like it's more ideal to be breastfed for the nutrition and craniofacial muscles to be worked than a bottle. And it's better to be weaned onto real food than to, mush, baby food mush. So I mean, that's kind of what I believe the evidence points to more so than anything is the cause of our current malocclusions.
Okay, so we have a few things happening here, right?
Yeah,
So
a lot. That's yeah. It's
yeah,
a
yeah,
domino. It's a cascading effect.
yeah. So we can see that in the fossil records or whatever that, pre-agricultural revolution, it seemed that malocclusion and faces, like I've seen this in, if we read what's his name's book,
Dr.
you know
Price,
his,
Weston A.
yeah,
Price.
Dr. Price's book, you see the Native Americans, their faces were wide, right?
Yep.
And their teeth were perfect,
Yep.
right? At least the ones he took pictures of, right?
Yeah.
So, right. But, um, and like certain people, like the Mandans, I believe, were like super, they were much
Oh.
taller too, like
Yep.
taller as a people, like in the 6 foot
Yep.
range or more, where the Comanches were like really little people. But, so you see, like in the record, we have this total shift in like people's just total structure in their face
Development.
and everything. Yeah, and you
Yep.
can
You're
see
right.
it, right?
Yeah.
Like
I
you
mean,
can
you
you
mentioned getting shorter. Like after the agricultural revolution, I think the average height of the skeletons over 5 inches shorter, like significant drop in height, which is a proxy for population health as well. Like as you mentioned, it's just evidence of decreased nutritional status.
so and you would say, I mean, I agree with you, but for the sake of the listener, so you would say that because we went from basically a much more meat heavy, animal product heavy diet, which is much more fat soluble vitamins, much more easy to digest, much more nutrient dense in general.
Yep.
Since we went from that into processed grains, sugar, flours, all this other stuff. And, people basically started eating biscuits and beans, like typical cowboy rations, right? Biscuits and beans. And
Yep.
that drop in nutrients is creating a cascading effect into basically our skeletal structure in general, and then our health. Would that be correct?
That's correct. I mean, one of the examples that I like to give, because a lot of times people don't think malocclusion can be caused by like a vitamin deficiency. But like in the 1970s, women that were taking warfarin, which is an anticoagulant, which basically works because vitamin K is like an anticoagulation vitamin. So so by taking warfarin, it decreases your vitamin K, basically gives you a vitamin K deficiency. And those mothers that had a vitamin K deficiency would have children with severe malocclusion because vitamin K is a very important vitamin, not just for coagulation. It turns out when it comes to like fully developing your jaws, because vitamin K works closely with vitamin D and calcium for structural, especially craniofacial structure development. So yeah, absolutely. Like a vitamin deficiency can cause structural changes, and I think the evidence is like that, like nutritional status, like low nutritional status, and low chewing, because that also it's like kind of working out a muscle. You need to eat the right food to build the muscle, but you also got to work out in the gym to build that muscle. Like growing your face properly does require those two things as well. And so I would say those two things are predominantly why the faces aren't growing like they should.
Yeah, that's I agree. What would you say for those who might not know about, like, let's say, following your example, vitamin K?
Mhm.
What what are good sources of vitamin K? Are there different types of vitamin K? And can I get that from plants?
It's a good question. And it can be a very complicated question too, because you have
Mm,
vitamin K1, which you can get from plants. It tends to be not super bioavailable for humans. But there's also vitamin K2, which you get in animals. And K2 comes in MK4 and MK7. MK7 you can get through something like natto or natto, the Japanese dish, which is pretty disgusting, I hear. I've never tried it. Um, which is a good source of vitamin K, but it's MK7, which does act differently than MK4, which you will get in things like beef, and eggs and yolks. So yes, you have the different vitamins. Vitamin K is not well converted to vitamin K2, but luckily there's animals like cows that will eat grass, take that vitamin K1, convert it to vitamin K2, the kind that we really need and can use, and then we eat the cow that has converted that K1 to K2 already. So then we get the vitamin K2 from the cow. So yeah, the vitamin K, like you can get in plants and animals. K2 you're going to get in animals besides like MK7 that you might get through fermented soybeans. But really, vitamin K2 you're mostly just going to get in animals. K1 you can get in plants, but limited degrees, and it's very I'll say low bioavailability because it's converted very poorly to vitamin K2 in most people.
So what I'm hearing is, yes, this stuff is available, but for humans, it's much more easy for me to absorb from an animal than it is from a plant. Like, because there's a conversion process, right? So it's like going to
Yep.
the money exchange, right?
Yes.
There's always a tax on the money exchange. You're never getting back what you gave, right? So you're
And this
like,
is
hey, here's
true
a
with
hundred, you
like
get back like 80. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
this is true with like most vitamins and minerals. So you can get iron in plants and animals, but plant iron is non-heme iron, poorly, not nearly as well absorbed as heme iron. It's true of vitamin D, like vitamin D3 versus vitamin D2. It's true of vitamin A. Plants and animals have different forms of vitamin A. We almost always need like we better absorb and use animal forms of these, which is maybe not surprising. It's like different operating systems. And when we eat from this other operating system, we have to convert it to one that we can use. And often that conversion process, like you said, is not good. It's someone, the tax man taking a lot off the top.
yeah, I actually found that in my own experience. Like when I mean, I've been doing fitness stuff for, 30 plus years and, coaching people, playing with different diets. And for me, a basic kind of animal based, kind of paleo like diet. I saw you
Mhm.
posted today about paleo, and I
Yep.
get your email. So you posted about carnivore paleo. Um,
Yep.
but I mean, I would say I eat mostly animal products now with vegetables that don't mess with me, right?
Yeah.
So things that don't give me gas, don't give me
Yep.
bloating, I feel great on them, totally fine, right? As soon as I'm start like getting gassy and stuff, I'm like, man, we're not doing that again.
Yep.
But as soon as that happened, I actually noticed over some years that like even my facial structure has gotten bigger. And I
Yep.
know people are gonna be like, that's weird. Like, are you on drugs? And I'm like, no, I'm not on drugs. None that you know about anyway.
Yeah.
So but like seriously, like I used to have to tighten my hat more. I don't have to tighten I have to loosen my hat now. So, and that with lifting weights, I feel like my bone structure has gotten bigger too, just from so many years of doing it and making sure I'm eating plenty of beef and pork chops and fish and
Yeah.
everything else. Would you, do you, I would imagine you would agree with that's a possibility. Do you think?
It it is possible, and mewing is this very kind of trendy thing, even with like young kids right now and in the social media sphere. So mewing, in essence, is using proper oral posture, meaning like the tongue is on the palate, your lips are sealed, and there's a little bit more to it, but that's the gist of it. Now you have sutures at the top of the palate, and these sutures you actually can stimulate them to expand, if you will. And so yes, you can see like facial changes. Now it's much more effective and in developing kids before you develop. But yeah, the changes can be made. I've seen people make changes. I actually believe maybe it's subtle, but like I see changes in my face because I'm the classic like what I say you don't want. Like I got this long, skinny face. Like I had like all the problems that we talked about growing up. Cavities, I had headgear, I had wisdom teeth taken out. I had all the issues. Probably why I know this stuff back, back and forth. But I think I have also just like seen improvements like in my face over the last probably 10 years because I've practiced keeping my mouth shut and the tongue on the palate and breathing through my nose and eating the right foods and like you said, working out. Yeah, whatever you're doing is working, man. You look fit as can be. You said you've been doing this for 30 years. I thought you looked like you're 30. So I
No,
don't
I'm
know if you can do any
47.
such. You're 47. Are you coloring your hair or something? My God.
No,
All right,
no,
you
man.
tell me what to do. All right, feed me some information here.
You need some Trembolone. You need some. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, no, man. Well, thank you for those kind words, but yeah, maybe it's just genetics. Pick your parents well, and you do a good.
I
You'll be
think
okay.
lifestyle probably plays a pretty
Yeah,
prominent role in this.
yeah. I mean, we've been doing this a long time, and we like I quit drinking, smoking, all that. Like the basic things. Like like
Yeah.
if you can get 90% of your health improvements just by making a few small changes, like go to bed on time, you know,
Yep. Eat a
stop
lot of
drinking
meat,
your
go to bed on
calories.
time, breathe through your nose, exercise. Yeah, it's
Exactly. Like it's not that bad. But what would you say, okay, for people who are hearing this and like most people are going to do, they're going to be like, oh, freak, what do I need to do? Right?
yep.
Like, how do I start this? And I know I even signed up for your 90-day challenge. I haven't signed up for it. I'm listening to it. It's extremely good information. Um, what, how do people start going down this road of thinking about nutrition as medicine in a sense, as
Mhm.
structural change rather than, oh well, I can't have those Pringles. I need to have, I can only have 200 calories of this bar or that. Like, how do we get people moving down that road? Because I agree with you that this is like foundational health.
Yep.
It's foundational. Like, I mean, if the teeth in your head, like you said, are like we
Not
can
fitting.
dig in the ground and find teeth from a millennia ago, then how come mine all have holes in them? You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
Right.
and I was thinking about this. I was thinking about this conversation when I was in middle school. I grew up in Louisiana, South Louisiana, so we're true Cajuns. But like many of the kids who I went to school with, were from very poor backgrounds. And dude, some of them literally had holes in their teeth, like you could see
Yep.
like through the gaps in their teeth,
Oh
and there were
yeah.
holes like somebody drilled through them. And I
Yep.
remember watching those kids. They always had a bag of candy on them. They always had a bag of candy, and I was like, and I'm 47, and now I'm making the connection. Hey, like that makes more sense now. So
Yeah.
how do people start down this road, man? Like it seems like it could be a big undertaking, but maybe it's not.
I think there's a couple things. Like you mentioned, like I put a program out there, a 90-day carnivore challenge, which
Hmm.
is if someone like is the kind of person that wants to learn, like they like enjoy, like, hey, I want to know why, give me the details. I want to know I want to know. That's great for them. For someone that's like doesn't want to do that and like tell me what to do, I say, listen to Adam. Like, look at him. He's 47 years old. My God. Like, but I mean, like you said, there's simple things that I think a lot of people can do. And one of them is like beef is like the most demonized food over the last 70 years or so. But literally, I think if most people, like, this is true in the US mostly, or not mostly, but just because it's the ruminant meat that is most available to most people, and you can actually get good fine deals and make it work, like ground beef. Like, people need to eat so much more beef. And that's not to be overwhelming, but it's just like you need every meal, you a meat needs to be like the main course, right? And now if you have your other stuff on the sides, like call it fluff or filler or like, but you got to just focus. Meat needs to be the main thing. Of the meats, I think beef should be the main thing people eat. I've been going to like, chicken. I mean, some chicken's fine, some pork is fine, but quality starts to matter a little bit more there. So, and beef is delicious. So, so I'm like, hey, just eat a lot of beef, eggs, if you like dairy and you do good with dairy, and then so you don't have to overcomplicate it because most people are just so under eating nutrition that if you just do this one thing, like that makes a world of difference. And then, like you said, you go to bed on time, you get some exercise, you lift some weights, you get some sun exposure. Like these are other things that I think are very good and very important. Like breathing through your nose, getting a good night's sleep, make sure you don't have sleep disordered breathing. Like treating sleep disordered breathing, I realize and see firsthand just how much it wrecks someone's life. And it makes sense. Sleep disorder, like someone that has sleep apnea, they generally go like 5 to 10 years without a diagnosis, which means they've literally gone like a decade of very, very bad sleep of like almost like to the point of like you haven't slept for a decade. And then they get treated and it's like, whoa, that's how I'm supposed to feel. And so then they actually have the energy to move and eat right and such. So I mean, there are some important things and it seems overwhelming, but I could make a list of probably 5 things that like, hey, if you do these 5 things, it really does move the needle on your health. And like we just kind of talked about them, like much more meat, like just beef, put it on the plate every meal. um, sleep and making sure you don't have a sleep disorder. And I'm sure your audience is probably pretty healthy, so it's not, but the general population, man, it is wild. I think we spend 24/7 indoors, and I think getting some sun exposure and your feet on the ground and some movement outdoors like does wonders from like a mental health perspective, overall health. But like it's a small thing, that seemingly small thing, but I think makes a big difference. Of course, working out, I think that's beneficial for a lot of people. So like there's small things that you can do that really move the needle in a big way. But if you like to dive deep into like this kind of nutrition stuff, there's places to go for that too.
Yeah, I agree. I will say to anybody listening, if you're interested in kind of diving a little bit deeper in kind of the lifestyle change part of this and the kind of meat as a medicine kind of thing,
Yeah.
um, Dr. Kevin's his 90-day carnivore challenge is actually kind of you can tell he put a ton of work into it, and it's fairly priced. You're going to get way more work out of it, and it's not just going to be about eating a steak. There's a lot of mental models and progressions and 4% rule. There's a lot in there, right? So I will tell you it's a great resource. I've been doing this a long time, and I was learning stuff, so it was freaking awesome. But I would say I tell people all the time, right? If meat is not the main star of your meal, you're not eating, right? You're having a snack. So
I agree.
I don't understand how, like, okay, so I lived in Africa for a little while, uh, and literally they would tell you if there's no meat, there's no meal, right? Like
Yeah. What are you
they
doing?
were like they were like, hey, I'm seeing salad, I'm seeing potatoes, or like, but where's the food? You know what I mean? That's literally
Exactly.
what they would say.
You know what, Adam, what's crazy is if people that do carnivore for a while, so I've done it mostly for 7 years, and there's been time periods where I'm gonna try potatoes, or I'm gonna try rice, or I'm gonna try fruit. Whenever I try anything else, like it doesn't seem like what you just said is accurate. It almost doesn't seem like what's the real food? And like when I said earlier, I'm like, make meat the main thing and the other stuff like fluff. And it actually feels like this is like extraneous fluff to some degree. Um, and not that you can't get nutrition out of other foods, you definitely can, but it almost like the mindset change is visceral. Once people actually are like, oh, I'm eating real food. And then if you take that real food away, you're like, where's the real food?
Yeah, I find that too. Like, much of the people who listen to me are much more people who are like seeking. They're trying to learn. They're because I mean I feel like my gift is to try to make more complex things a little more practical, maybe a little bit more attainable. Um, but I find like when you start eating this way, like when you really start focusing on meat, and you tell me if this has been your experience. The other stuff is nice, but it feels like a topping. Like like the other night I had like last night I had some chicken thighs, and I eat like 3 or 4 of those things, right? But the potatoes I had were like literally just a topping. It was just
Yep.
some other stuff to chew on. But I'm just never really hungry, right? I don't have overeating problems anymore. I don't feel this need to jam food in my face all the time. Do you find that those kind of cravings, those hormonal shifts, start to level out a little bit?
That's maybe the biggest thing I realized with the carnivore diet. And just 2 second backstory, or maybe 2 minute. But I think the audience will appreciate this. So I started doing the carnivore diet in 2017. Um, and after 2 years, maybe it was 2.5 years or so, I did my first real carbohydrate experiments. And I went 2 years. It was like the strictest 2 years probably anyone's ever done because I was living by myself. I just had literally just meat for 2 straight years. Um, and so at this time I'd been writing about it. People were asking me like, dude, but what if you like, can you eat carbohydrates again? Like, or is fiber just going to kill you? Like, or is your gut destroyed? And I was like, you know what? Let me do some carbohydrate experiments. And I have a long article. People want to read this in depth. It's called Carbohydrates in the Carnivore Diet. You just Google that, it'll pop up. Maybe you have to put Kevin Stock by, but regardless, the gist of the story I wanted to tell you is I used to have like you just said, I would eat like back before the old Kevin would eat like some ice cream, and then I would need to eat like a half gallon. I wouldn't feel satisfied until it was gone, and I was very much like all or nothing. Like I want to eat all of it. There's not like open a bag of chips and have like a chip. It's like, look, the serving size is the bag of chips, and I often didn't feel like truly satiated and full unless like my stomach hurt. And it's like, okay, it seemed like it seemed normal back then, like maybe, I don't know. But after 2 years of carnivore diet, I remember I wrote this, I was doing this carbohydrate experiment. I'm like, I'm traveling. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna try some ice cream. I had some ice cream. I was like, man, it was fantastic, but there was no need to be like, I need to go crush a half gallon. And there's various weird things that happened with this experiment. Like I had there was some, maybe it was a diet soda, artificial sweetener of some kind. This is several years ago, so I'm drawing blanks on this on the details. I could go reread that article, but it tasted bad to me. Like the artificial sweetener that I used to love, I would just crush it because I was like quote unquote free calories. Tasted bad. I'm like, how did I used to drink this stuff? So just to your point, like a lot of like the relationship with my food changed dramatically uh after that time period. And I was able to add in carbohydrates and be all right. So I was able to figure out which ones like, oh, I feel good with that one. That one was horrible. And anyways, that article goes into depth, but just to your point, like my whole relationship with food changed, and I would argue for the better, where I eat a meal and I feel satisfied without my stomach hurting. Like I don't need to overeat to be like, I feel like back then it's like I was doing that in order to try and get all the nutrients that my body's wanting. And because I'm eating such nutrient devoid food, it's like, give me more, but the stomach hurts, but I want more. Whereas now it's like I can eat less and I get all the nutrition I need. I'm like, all right, I'm good. So yeah, sorry to,
No, no,
rant on
that's
that, but
excellent
that,
because I think it speaks to most people have disordered eating patterns,
yep,
and it's because they're malnourished, they're overfed at the same time, they're underslept, right? So all these signals that
yep,
the body uses to regulate my size, my health, who I am,
yep,
is they're all in chaos because I'm eating plenty of energy, which is why I'm getting fat, but I'm getting no nutrition, so I need more of it, you know? So I
exactly,
find like what you said, taking a moment to be relatively strict, or just saying, hey, I'm gonna start inching, depending on your personality, right?
exactly, 100%.
I'm more of an incher.
Yep,
Like I'll take a year to make a change, right?
yep,
And I can do that because I'm very meticulous in my like slight pressure that I put on myself. Where some
yep,
people are like, nope,
all in.
burn the pantry. We
Yep,
gotta, I'm only going to Costco and I'm only wearing, minimalist shoes and no shirt.
yep,
Like they just go all in, right?
all in.
So,
Right.
but having a time where you start focusing on real food again will literally change your life because we're not saying plants are going to kill you. I don't think Kevin would say plants are trying to kill you. Some people are saying that. That's okay.
Yep,
Let them say it. But I do think there's something to this disordered eating, the fact that we're just not getting enough nutrients. And I think, like you said, beef is that thing, right? It's the most available thing we have. But
yep,
why, in your mind, Kevin, and we're going to put on our tinfoil hats here a little bit,
sure.
okay? Why, in your mind, is it so demonized? Why, in your mind, um, do you think that we have so much fear around this nu- nuclear fission of food here?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of different things that kind of created a story in the mid 20th century that basically this story then got propagated. And the start of the story is everything between, I'll say, perverse incentives, even economic issues, because beef is not something you can just whip off a manufacturing line and increase, indefinitely. So there's an aspect, and there's a book called The Fiat Standard, and there's a chapter in that book that talks about um, what I'll say the economy has to do with why the government wouldn't want everyone to be eating beef, because it would just be so astronomically expensive that the poor would just up, like, it would basically cause riots. Be like, the real food that we want to eat is basically out of, reach for um basically probably it'd probably be most people at this point. If everyone just started eating meat with the production that we have, it would just be astronomically expensive. Um, However, cheap grains and this nutrient devoid food is we can be made cheaply, have infinite shelf life and such. So there's like an economic reason. There's also like, from it's kind of a similar point of view, like incentives from these corporations that make these foods. Like, we want these foods to be thought of as healthy, and various kinds of studies that were done around this time that were pretty shady, that'd be like, hey, we can say red meat is bad, we can say this other stuff is good. And
Are we talking about Brother Keys, Brother
we
Ansel?
talk about Keys played a very big role in this. you know the president had a heart attack around that time, and then, like, so there's all these various things, be like, oh, cholesterol, saturated fat, oh, Keys, oh, the American Heart Association's getting funding from Procter and Gamble. Oh, Procter and Gamble's coming out with these new kinds of fats. So yeah, tinfoil hat, but I think there's a lot of just like reality to people's incentives, and you can just kind of follow the
Mm-hmm.
money sometimes, and it's, not to be like just I don't know. Sometimes you like literally just can follow the money. Like, the business is there to make money, and this is what they're selling, and this is what the incentives, point out. And now we got this whole big pharmaceutical industry too that also just profits off people being sick. So who profits off you being healthy? Like, I don't know,
No
right?
one.
Exactly.
Me. I
So
profit off me being healthy.
exactly. So you got to take health into your own hands, I think. Like, for example, if everyone just started eating like we're talking about right now, like, the dental profession would just disappear, besides like acute dental care, like if someone gets punched in the face when we fix a tooth. But like, if we're not fixing cavities, like if there's no more cavities and malocclusion, like, man, what are we doing? We got way too many dentists. I'm out of a job. And I don't think dentistry is the only profession, but like, I don't think that's why we have perverse, like, I don't think dentists want you to have cavities. Like, there's enough for us to keep busy. But like, the incentive really isn't there to be like, I don't want my patients to get cavities. Let me drill this nutrition information down their throat so they don't show up in my office with cavities. Like, the dentist is like, I don't want to say they don't care, but like, when you bring them cavities every 6 months, like, that's just like, that's how they make money. Like,
Yeah,
that's they do make
they're
money
not
like
hoping you
recalls,
have
but
cavities.
yeah, I mean, so
They're not
tinfoil
hoping you
hat.
have them, but they're not also crying that you have them. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I mean, your dentist isn't mad that you need another crown. Like, ah,
No, that's
I've
five
been
hundred
telling
bucks,
you,
dude.
change your diet so we didn't have to do these crowns.
I know, right? Yeah, get sued, by somebody else. But what? Okay, so maybe you can. We got a few more minutes here. What people are going to say? Beef, okay, heart disease, right? Do you feel comfortable talking around that? Like, should people fear beef? Should we fear saturated fat? Right?
No,
Like,
I
what do
think
you think?
I think even the evidence today, and I guess this is controversial, but I even think the evidence today is that red meat was falsely vilified. I could very confidently say red meat does not cause heart disease. And people would be like, well, this is just a dentist, so I'm not going to take his word for him. That's fine. Don't take my word for it. Do your own research. Um, but yeah, it's wild. And you go back to like, we see the dramatic rise in heart disease. It correlates pretty well with like the demonization of these saturated fats. Like, it started going up, and then it comes back down because we have advances well, we stopped smoking, and we also have advances in cardiovascular care. So we actually see that come back down. But so there's all kinds of skewed data, and research isn't perfect. And I think that's one of the things that people don't realize. Like for every study you see that says something, you're gonna find another one that says something else. You can find what you're looking for, and none of these studies are perfect. A lot of them are just based on epidemiology, which is classically misleading. And so then you need to validate in like human randomized trials, which necessarily are kind of short with small sample sizes. So then they have their own limitations because we're talking about a disease that takes decades to develop. So long story short, research isn't perfect, but I do look at a lot of research, and I can pretty confidently say that, yeah, eating red meats does not cause heart disease. And I would actually make the argument that, like, if you're not eating these animal foods, you are likely increasing your risk for heart disease and things like cancers and dementias. And just one of the things that we talked about is vitamin K, and specifically vitamin K2, which has this very important role of directing calcium. We talked about how it interplays with vitamin D and calcium and craniofacial development. But I encourage people to look up the Rotterdam study. This is a study where, so before I talk about that, K2 will move calcium to where you want it, which is your bones and teeth, and away from places you don't want it, which is the soft tissue, like your arteries. So if you're deficient in vitamin K, you are higher risk of getting calcification in your arteries and not the calcium put where you want it into your bones and teeth. So vitamin K is super important, but if people are avoiding red meat and animal food and animal fat, well, then they're likely not going to get the vitamin K that they need. And so this Rotterdam study looked at these vitamin K levels in heart disease, and it just showed basically like if you want to increase your risk of heart disease, be deficient in vitamin K. If you want to decrease your risk in heart disease, eat a lot of foods that have vitamin K2, which is animal food. So it's kind of contrary to what a lot of people would think.
Dude, that one, I didn't realize K2, that was one of the functions of K2,
Yep.
that it actually puts calcium where it's needed, like bones, teeth, muscle activation, contraction, things like that, and away from, those pesky old, arteries,
Arteries.
like the things that keep getting clogged, right? Because you do go to the doctor and ask for a CAC, like a
Right.
coronary
Yeah,
artery
it's like
calcification score or whatever, right?
it's a
So
calcium
I'm
paradox.
like,
Like you're like, is calcium good or is calcium bad? We're like, well, it depends where that calcium is being put. Like if your calcium is fortifying your bones and your teeth, that's good. If your calcium is going to your arteries, well, that's bad. Well, what does it do? What dictates where it goes? Well, there's various vitamins that play this key role in dictating where these minerals are deposited. And yeah, animal
that
fats are very important for that role.
that's super interesting too, because like in the US, we eat more dairy calcium than most countries, but um, we have more osteoporosis than most countries as well, it seems. Obviously, that could be partially because we're super sedentary, but also our K2 consumption is probably much lower due to the amount of red meat red meat's down like 30% over like how
It's
much we
down from
consume as a
Oh, yeah, it's down significantly. But the other thing about the dairy is dairy does have vitamin K too, but most of the milk that people are consuming is skim milk, right? So
true.
the animal fat and the fat soluble vitamins, how much is lost? Probably a significant amount, also due to pasteurization. So if people are eating whole raw dairy, they're getting vitamin K too in that, especially if, yeah,
Nice.
healthy raised cows as well. It plays a big role.
Yeah, that does play a big role, right? And I'm sorry, like here we can't get raw dairy in Tennessee. I'm trying, but
It's
I
not
can't
easy
find
here
it.
in St. Louis, but I make do with that black market.
Like it's for my pets.
It's,
You're like,
I mean, seriously,
it's
I
funny.
like to say I got my goat milk lady, and we meet in a parking lot. We were meeting on the weekend in the morning, and there's like this cop, and we're I'm giving her cash, and we got our trunks open, like a deal's going down. I'm just like, there's a cop right over there. We're about to get busted for a raw milk exchange, but safe,
He'd have been
not
like,
not
y'all are dealing milk? Like, what's happening here? You know, the
exactly.
FDA comes busted in. Anyway,
Exactly.
so
It's not
hey,
illegal here
Kevin,
in Missouri.
yeah, I'll be in St. Louis pretty soon, dude. I would love to connect if you ever want to catch a training
For sure.
session or whatever. I mean, we are recording this, so you have to say yes.
Yep.
So I'm just kidding.
Deal.
No, I'm serious. But um, I wanted to say one of the things I feel like maybe we need to say is we're not saying that everybody needs to be on a carnivore diet. right? I don't think you would say that either. I don't think everybody
Nope.
needs to, but I think we would unequivocally say everyone needs to focus on eating more animal products, particularly beef and probably eggs, right? I would don't fear them, right?
Yep.
Um, and the main reason is because we're running into this just we're overfed and undernourished significantly, and I think that a great place to start for most people is just like, man, just take some of those potatoes off the plate and put a little bit more steak. I tell my clients, they're like, how much meat should I put on my plate? I'm saying, when you look at it, if it looks like it's a little too much, you're right there, right? If you look at like, I don't know if I can finish that. All right, just get chopping. You know what I mean? Like, to me,
Yep.
that's the perfect size. What would you say is the what would you, and the last question I want to ask is, when it comes to this total just food as medicine and our bone structures and everything, what would you say is like that number one change people should make? Should it just be just more protein on the plate? What do you think it is? Just the If I had to do one thing, what would it be?
I do think the more red meat on the plate, and to your point, I would say just like a specific guidelines for someone, like what's a minimum? I'm like, if you're a man, shoot for a half pound of beef 3 times a day, right? It's not a lot. It's not a lot of meat. It might sound like it, but if someone thinks that's a lot of meat, only eat a half pound of red meat for 3 meals for a couple days, and then come back to me and let me. You'd be like, okay, I need more food, right? Okay, so it's really not a lot. That'll give you 150 grams of protein, nutrient dense, highest quality nutrition. And if you ruin the rest of your diet, I don't recommend doing that. But that is a great kind of like minimum where and women could be err on the side of just a little bit less, right? But even for men, I think it should probably be a little bit more than that. So maybe that's a good, ballpark range for women. But to me, that's always like, hey, that's a good minimum. Like, what should I focus on? Secondarily, I also think it's important to like realize, hey, what actually are the foods that are the worst foods? Because we talked about like, hey, some potatoes, some white rice, like roots and fruits are better options. The thing that I think is starting to get more attention these days, if you live on the Twitterverse or something like that, but it's omega-6 fatty acids. I actually think like if there's a smoking gun of obesity and metabolic disorder, it is the prevalence of omega-6, like linoleic acid in the diet, typified by like seed oils, vegetable oils. Just don't eat vegetable oils. Like just give yourself it's a hard blanket rule because they are in everything. But if you had to give yourself a blanket rule, that's one. Like I don't, if I deviate, I'll deviate on something, but I'm not going to deviate with vegetable oils. To me, it's almost like it's like smoking a cigarette almost to me. It's like, look, I'm not doing that. Like, so yeah, those are what I would definitely avoid. Refined grains and sugars should be limited. Uh, I think of those things like, hey, let's definitely limit those omega-6, kind of like fatty acid seed oils. I just totally avoid those. Focus on the meat and, for filler foods, the roots and the fruits and some honey, I think are the most biologically appropriate for humans. And if you take these guidelines, I think it's pretty simple, right? It's not too complicated. You'll thrive. You'll thrive.
Dude, I would 100% agree. Like, those three rules, I think, are a great place to start for most people. Look, increase your protein intake, red meat in particular, avoid seed oils, and your processed sugars and grains. Just keep those at a minimum. If you're gonna splurge, splurge lightly. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, just realize you're not doing yourself any favor by poisoning yourself, right?
Yep.
So it's funny how we celebrate with poison. You know, it's
Yes.
interesting to me. But Kevin, thank you so much for being here, man. Where can people find you? I find your content very enlightening. It's humorous as well. Can you kind of just give us all your tags and your spots where people can find you if they want to find out more information about you?
Yeah. Usually the handle's like Kevin Stock 12, like at all the places. I write a weekly newsletter, but usually takes the stuff that I would post on social and puts it all in one place, or just the good stuff. So I usually tell people like, hey, if you're just gonna do one thing, I just follow the newsletter. I'll put the best stuff in that. But yeah, I post on all the other stuff too.
Nice. So yeah, guys, I would say Follow Kevin online, particularly. I think you're on Twitter quite a bit and Instagram quite a bit. I know that.
Yep.
Newsletter, I get it every Saturday, right?
Yep.
It's the
Saturday
7
7.
Saturday 7. It's great. It's easy to read, and it always has something, a cool nugget to take away. So, Kevin, thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate your time, and I do hope we can catch a training session in St. Louis at some point.
For sure. Thanks for having me on. Enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah, great times, man. Thank you.
Hey there, guys. I want to take a quick second to highlight a partner that we've been working with lately, Upgraded Formulas. You can see them at upgradedformulas.com. I have personally been taking their upgraded T formula to support natural testosterone production. I've noticed it after a few months. I've noticed I've had a bit more mental clarity. My rest is a little better, and I'm recovering a bit better from my workouts, which was actually surprising. So I'm able to exercise just a bit more. I love to exercise, so that's a bonus for me. Women can also take this because healthy testosterone levels in women help with fat loss, mental clarity, muscle gain, things like that. And also, the estrogen and testosterone go together hand in hand. If you support one, the other does pretty well as well. So definitely check them out. Also, they do something really great. I want to highlight a hair mineral analysis where you send them a little chunk of your hair and they will let you know if you're deficient in anything or if you have too much of something like heavy metals in your system. So what this does is this is a great thing to help give you data on your health so that you can make decisions. None of this is a miracle cure. All of it is just information to help you make better decisions around your health and supplementation. All right, so really check them out. They're doing some really great quality. They're seeing some huge results, and I believe they're going to have some clinical studies coming out pretty soon. So check them out, upgradedformulas.com. Use the code ADAM10 to get a 10% discount today.